In the dim flicker of candlelight and the steady rhythm of horse hooves on cobblestone, the world stood on the precipice of an unimaginable rupture. It was the late 18th century, in the green valleys and smoky workshops of Britain, where the old agrarian order that had sustained humanity for millennia suddenly began to fracture under forces few could name. This was not a collapse marked by invading armies or fallen kings, but something quieter, more insidious, and ultimately more transformative: the birth of industrial society. The air itself seemed to thicken with unseen potential and dread, as if the very soil whispered warnings that went unheard. Mills and forges hummed where fields once swayed, and in that shift, an entire civilization would be remade forever. But no one understood what was coming next, how the machines would devour the old ways and birth a new world of steel and steam, prosperity laced with profound human cost. For centuries, daily life unfolded in the predictable cadence of seasons and manual toil. Farmers rose before dawn to till the earth with wooden plows, their hands calloused from generations of labor passed down through bloodlines. Villages nestled in the English countryside echoed with the sounds of blacksmith hammers, the lowing of cattle, and the chatter of women spinning wool by hearth fires. Life was hard but rooted, bound to the land and the slow turning of natural cycles. Families worked together in cottage industries, weaving cloth in their homes under the soft glow of oil lamps, trading goods at local markets, where the pace allowed for conversation and community. The scent of fresh bread and damp earth mingled with wood smoke, creating a sensory tapestry of continuity. Yet beneath this rhythm lay the invisible pressures of a growing population, straining against limited resources, a tension building so gradually that it felt like the natural order of things. The collapse of the old world did not begin with chaos, it began quietly, in the incremental changes that reshaped routines without fanfare. Early warning signs flickered like distant storm clouds on the horizon. Enclosure acts swept across the countryside, fencing off common lands that once sustained peasant families, forcing many into uncertain futures. Population surged as improved agriculture and medical knowledge reduced infant mortality, yet the land could not yield enough without new methods. Inventors tinkered in modest workshops, their experiments with coal and water power dismissed by many as eccentric curiosities. The spinning jenny and water frame emerged not as saviors, but as harbingers, promising efficiency while threatening the livelihoods of skilled artisans. In the silence of rural nights, displaced workers whispered of lost independence, their voices carrying a subtle unease. Factories began to rise on riverbanks, their water wheels turning with relentless mechanical precision, drawing people from villages into growing towns. Still, the elite and common folk alike clung to tradition, failing to grasp how these scattered innovations would unravel the social fabric, woven over centuries. By the time the signs became clearer, the momentum was already gathering, invisible forces accelerating toward an irreversible threshold. Rising tension gripped the heart of society as urban centers swelled with migrants seeking work. Manchester and Birmingham transformed from sleepy market towns into labyrinths of brick and chimney stacks, where the air grew heavy with coal dust and the constant clatter of looms. Workers toiled in dim, overcrowded factories for long hours, their bodies adapting to the unyielding rhythm of machines that never tired. Guilds that once protected craftsman standards crumbled under the weight of competition, as cheaper factory goods flooded markets. Landowners invested in canals and turnpikes, knitting the nation together for faster transport of raw materials and products. Yet this connectivity also spread instability. Food shortages sparked riots in the streets, while intellectuals debated the moral cost of progress. The old social hierarchies, once stable as the feudal system they replaced, now strained under new pressures of capital and labor. Whispers of unrest grew louder, but leaders pressed forward, convinced that mechanization would solve the very problems it exacerbated. The system held, yet fractures deepened with every turning wheel and billowing smokestack. Key decisions and technological leaps propelled the transformation with accelerating force. James Watt's improvements to the steam engine unlocked power unbound by rivers or wind, allowing factories to multiply far from water sources and dominate the landscape. Entrepreneurs like Richard Arkwright built massive mills, centralizing production and amassing fortunes that redefined wealth. Government policies favored industrial growth, with laws that favored factory owners over displaced laborers. Coal mines burrowed deeper into the earth, their shafts echoing with the picks of miners who labored in perpetual darkness, fueling the insatiable hunger of furnaces. These choices, made in boardrooms and patent offices, seemed pragmatic at the time, yet they carried profound mistakes, overlooking the human toll, the environmental degradation, and the social upheaval that would follow. Pressures mounted as international competition loomed, pushing Britain to industrialize faster, exporting not just goods but a revolutionary model that would ripple across continents. The old world was not overthrown by decree, but eroded by the cumulative weight of these calculated risks. The moment the system began to fail arrived not with a single cataclysm, but through cascading breakdowns in the traditional order. Cottage industries vanished as factory gates swung open, swallowing skilled workers into regimented shifts under harsh overseers. Rural economies collapsed as young men and women migrated en masse to cities, leaving behind aging parents and fallow fields. Pollution choked rivers once teeming with fish, turning them into foul sewers that bred disease. The Luddites rose in defiance, smashing machines in nocturnal raids, their desperate acts a final cry against the machinery that rendered their crafts obsolete. Yet resistance proved futile against the tide of capital and innovation. By the early 19th century, the pre-industrial fabric had torn irreparably, replaced by a new order defined by clock time, wage labor, and urban anonymity. Silence fell over abandoned villages, while factory whistles pierced the dawn, summoning workers to their posts. The birth of industrial society was underway, a process that dismantled the old equilibrium with ruthless efficiency. Human consequences unfolded in stark, often harrowing scenes across the growing industrial heartlands. Families crammed into squalid tenements, where cholera and tuberculosis claimed lives with terrifying regularity, amid filth and overcrowding. Children as young as 5 labored in cotton mills, their small hands nimble for tying broken threads, their bodies stunted by endless hours and malnutrition. The sounds of coughing and machinery drowned out laughter, as workers returned home exhausted, their dreams of betterment fading into the grim reality of subsistence wages. Women, once central to domestic crafts, now operated power looms under flickering gaslight, facing exploitation and moral hazards in the new economy. Social bonds frayed as community ties dissolved in the anonymity of factory towns. Protests and strikes erupted, met with military force, revealing the deep fractures in the emerging class divide. The sensory reality was one of soot-blackened skies, the acrid smell of industry, and the pervasive exhaustion that marked a generation caught in history's merciless transition. Lives were irrevocably altered, with gains in productivity shadowed by profound losses in dignity and health. Social breakdown intensified as the old moral and economic frameworks proved inadequate for the new reality. Traditional authorities, church, manor, and guild, lost sway to the impersonal logic of the market. Crime rates climbed in overcrowded slums, where desperation bred theft and vice. Intellectuals and reformers documented the horrors in parliamentary reports, their words painting pictures of child workers maimed by unguarded machines, and families torn apart by poverty. Yet the industrial engine roared onward, driven by profit and imperial ambition. The Napoleonic Wars accelerated demand for manufactured goods, further entrenching the system even as it exposed its vulnerabilities. Trade unions formed in secret, challenging the status quo, while utopian visions clashed with harsh pragmatism. The collapse of pre-industrial society was complete in its cultural dimensions too, as folk traditions yielded to the regimentation of industrial time. What emerged was a fractured world, where opportunity coexisted with alienation, and progress demanded sacrifice from the most vulnerable. In the long arc of history, the birth of industrial society reshaped human civilization, on a scale rivaling the Neolithic Revolution. Productivity soared, enabling population booms, technological leaps, and the rise of global empires built on steamships and railways. Britain's model spread to Europe and America, igniting similar transformations that lifted billions from agrarian subsistence, while creating new forms of inequality and environmental strain. Cities became engines of innovation, birthing the modern middle class, and democratic movements fueled by an educated workforce. Yet the scars remained: polluted landscapes, exploited labor forces, and a worldview that prioritized efficiency over harmony with nature. The Industrial Revolution accelerated globalization, connecting distant markets, but also exporting the pains of rapid change. Its legacy is one of dualities: wealth and want, mastery over matter, alongside spiritual dislocation. The world we inhabit today, with its skyscrapers and digital networks, traces its roots to those smoky mills and iron forges, where humanity crossed a threshold from which there was no return. As the factories continued to belch smoke into the 19th century skies, the echoes of the old world grew fainter, replaced by the relentless pulse of pistons and gears. This rupture was not merely economic but existential, forcing humanity to redefine its relationship with labor, time, and the earth itself. The quiet villages faded into memory, their stories preserved in fading engravings and worker testimonies. What replaced them was a dynamic, often unforgiving machine of progress that promised abundance, yet delivered division. Historians would later debate its inevitability, but for those who lived through it, the experience was visceral. The loss of autonomy traded for survival in a new order. The birth pangs of industrial society revealed the fragility of all systems, how innovation can dismantle the familiar with breathtaking speed. In the silence between shifts, one could almost hear the ghosts of handloom weavers and plowmen, lamenting a world remade. The haunting reality lingers in our collective memory, a reminder that every advance carries the seeds of disruption. Industrial society delivered unprecedented material wealth, medical breakthroughs, and connectivity, yet it also sowed the environmental crises and social atomization that challenge us still. From the coal-blackened lungs of early workers to the gleaming assembly lines of the 20th century, the pattern repeats. Old structures yield to new ones, amid human suffering and ingenuity. As we stand amid our own technological revolutions, the lessons of this foundational collapse endure. The machines that once promised liberation continue to reshape lives, demanding adaptation at the cost of cherished traditions. In the end, the birth of industrial society stands as a testament to humanity's restless drive, a process of creation through destruction that forever altered the trajectory of civilization. Its story warns us that even in moments of profound rebirth, the shadows of what was lost stretch long across the future.